I think tonight that I unintentionally told Teresa a non-truth. All right? So we're not talking about a lie here. Just an unintentional non-truth. And that's a great way to start this episode of Coast to Coast Pinball, which is 195. Let's go. Welcome to Coast to Coast Pinball. My name is Nate Shivers. This is a podcast, it's a commentary, and I'm a man out of quarters. Coming to you tonight, not live, from beautiful, very mild climate right now this time of year, Burlington, Vermont. I am sitting on the edge, well, I'm actually in a hotel room, but I'm sitting here right on the edge of Lake Champlain in upstate Vermont. It is gorgeous, however it's dark out because it's past midnight. So coming to you not live here on Sunday night, Monday morning, September 13th, 14th, whatever you want to call it. Welcome. Thanks for joining me. And like I said in the open, I didn't mean to tell Teresa something that wasn't true, but we were talking and I was ready to go to bed. And I said, yeah, I'm going to bed. And I had every intention of going to bed about 30 minutes ago. And I got ready. I thought, well, I don't have real early morning tomorrow. I don't have any work stuff until afternoon. Could do a show. I could knock this show out that I've been trying to get to, the mailbag heavy show that I've been plotting. Yeah, I'll do that after I had told her, yeah, I'm going to bed. So it's a little, it is what it is. It's happened many times where she'll wake up and say, so you did a show last night? I'm like, yeah, I stayed up late. That's what I do. That's what we do. How is everybody? All right, so this show, I believe, is going to be mostly mailbag related, and if the mailbag doesn't take up enough time, we can always do crazy forum static mania, right? We haven't done that in a while, and that's always a fail-safe. I left the Boston area this morning after completing like 3 days of good work and events and stuff for my day job in the Boston area, and on the way up through New Hampshire, I couldn't help myself but stop back in at the Pinball Wizard Arcade in Pelham, New Hampshire. It's a fantastic place. I had about a 3-hour drive to get up here to Burlington, but I had some time, so I stopped in. I played some of the games that haunt me constantly. I actually went out of my way to play games like Fishtails, games like Whitewater that I've never been all that great at. And for those of you who follow on Facebook, I played one single game of NBA Fast Break. Bowen's cheat sheet from a few episodes ago was ringing in my head. I actually looked at pintips.net while I stood there in front of the game, and I tried to remember something Josh Sharp told me when I texted him once that I was about to play that game, and he said, just shoot the left saucer. And so I did all those things, and I answered the trivia out of my own knowledge in my own head and scored over 100 points for the first time ever, which I know I immediately got replies of, I score over 200 on that game. I know, I'm bad at that game. I'm not good at that. So I did that. I played Full Throttle again. I had a big game of Full Throttle, put up like 70-something million on Full Throttle as I'm really starting to figure the rules out a little bit better, learning how to start races and how to win races. And, that game is fast. That game has unique angles. That game has a different feel. It's fun to play something that's so different. It's like how I felt about America's Most Haunted, despite what anybody would say about their thoughts on the theme of either of these games or the artwork or anything. It's fun to just play a pinball machine that's new, that has a different feel to it. That feels like really something different. I really like that. So had a lot of fun playing that. And then I played some of the standards that I always play there. I love playing their Harlem Globetrotters, their 8-Ball Deluxe, played some Tron, and just, spent about an hour before I headed back out on the road. And it's a fantastic place, not far from the Boston area, so if you're in New England and you've got some time to kill, do yourself a favor and get over there. But without further ado, let's do this, shall we?
Check the email.
All right, you too can have your email possibly read on the show. Definitely read by me, and when I'm on my game, replied to by me. That's usually how that goes. All right, here we go. I've got the starred in my Gmail box, which is at coast2coastpinball@gmail.com. It's coast, the number 2, coastpinball@gmail.com. All right, here we go. This is from Mark. Could you talk about how you met some of the great players you have had on the show? I only found your show about 4 months ago and listened to every episode in order, and it was really interesting how you went from, and this is in quotes, so you know, quote, guy who just loves pinball and wants to talk about it, to guy everyone in pinball seems to be talking to. Also in quotes. I would love to know what that ride was like. Thanks so much for the show. I wish I had another 191 to listen to. Mark. Mark, thank you. I've had this stretch, and I think there's actually some more emails that we should get to tonight, of people telling me that they either just recently found the show or they've just recently gone back to the start and listened to all of the episodes, which I have done that. I've actually done that with other podcasts before. I've gotten into other interests or hobbies or whatever it might be and really liked a show and gone back and wanted to hear it from the start. And I've definitely done that, so I know what that's like. And so I've had a few people email me that recently, that they've been like kind of binge listening to Coast to Coast Pinball. That's awesome. I can't do that. I can't go listen to those old episodes because I think I replied to somebody, maybe Mark here actually. I replied to someone. I said, you know, you don't know what you don't know. And it certainly has been a journey as I've committed so much time to pinball and talking about the hobby, the games, the industry, the people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the question is sort of, I guess what he's saying is, in my first episodes, it was a long time before I didn't do many interviews very early on because I didn't really know anybody that anybody would want to be interviewed. Want to have interviewed on a show. And as the show gained some traction and people started like finding out about it, I started getting emails from people here, and they're like, oh, hey, found the show, it's really cool. Sometimes it was to clarify things that I'd said, to see if I'd made a mistake or might have painted something in a light that somebody didn't like. And sometimes it was just, if you ever wanted to talk on the show, I would love to come on. And I did take advantage of some of that. It really was a turning point when I started actually going to more events, I think, obviously, where I showed up at things like Papa, showed up at the Texas Pinball Festival, and just kind of went up and introduced myself to people and said, hey, I got this podcast. And, you know, some of them were like, oh, cool, a podcast about pinball. And some people were knew who I was, knew what the show was, and were already listening. So mixed bag there. And some people were quick to come on the show. You know, Josh Sharp came on the show without much, you know, I didn't have to beg Josh to come on because he is in a position with the IFPA where he wants to help to promote pinball, and he sees some fool like me spending hours and hours and hours talking about it. And he was more than happy, I think, at the time to do that first episode he and I did together and kind of chat about his career and the IFPA. And then I really have shied away from the beginning of the show, and I probably said this early on, that I didn't want to do a lot of interviews on topics that had already been covered. I didn't think that there was any real need for me to go, you know, corner Pat Lawler and do the let's talk about every game you built, Pat Lawler. As much as I would like to talk to Pat Lawler about that, I didn't think I necessarily needed to do that because I thought a lot of that Bally Williams era stuff had been covered very intelligently and deeply by Clay Harrell on Topcast. So I tried to, you know, find some people early on, like, you know, Scott at Riot Pinball, like Brendan Bailey, guys who were doing things in pinball that maybe nobody, you know, really knew a lot about, and find those. And I think those interviews went well. I think that the format works, and we had good conversations, and people appreciated that. And then so when I did go to ask other people, maybe some of those people had heard that, or they went and listened and they thought, okay, this guy's not a complete moron. He's going to be respectful. Yeah, I'll do the show. So most of it has just been going to shows and introducing myself. And you know, I've had very awkward moments where I felt like such a jerk, where I walked up to somebody and was like, hey, I'm Nate. I have this podcast, and they go, oh, cool, and they just like kind of turn around and ignore me. That's happened. You know, not everybody in every hobby wants to be friends, and that's fine. But overall, I think if you're listening to this show, you know how cool people are in pinball. And if you throw yourself out there, whether it's in your local scene, in your, you know, whether it's on Pinside, or whether it's at, you know, the big shows, you're going to make friends. And you know, I think it at the heart of all of it, anybody that's out playing pinball at a show competitively or is building a product in the pinball, world or in the space of the pinball industry wants to talk about it. They want to tell their story. They want to promote it. And I am a vehicle for that to some degree. And so I guess that's as best of an answer as I can give you there, Mark, is that it wasn't, there have been a few moments where I was like, oh man, like I'm hanging out with this guy. This is like really cool. But I've done that once already to a degree working in the guitar business. I've met a lot of people who I really looked up to through working in the musical instrument industry for most of my life. And it takes the edge off pretty quick when like you're sitting there with like, I remember hanging out with the guitar player from Def Leppard, Vivian Campbell, in an airport. And I was like, dude, that was the first concert I ever went to was Def Leppard. This is like one of my idols. At a 13 years old, I used to dream about like meeting and playing guitar with Def Leppard. And here I am sitting talking about golf or something with Vivian Campbell. And that makes it real easy to then go, meet, I don't know, John Papaduke. And it's like, oh, this guy designed some great pinball machines that I really like. So anyway, I don't know. Enough about that. Thank you for the email, Mark. I appreciate it. Appreciate you listening and everything, too. All right. Hi, Nate. I've heard you mention on some shows that you play the pinball arcade games. What platform do you play, and what are your favorite tables? I want to start playing myself, but it would cost a small fortune to buy all the games and all the seasons, so I need to pick and choose. Freshman at University of Delaware this year, and there isn't a lot of local pinball. Thanks in advance, Nathan. Well, hello, Nathan. So, yeah, I do play Pinball Arcade, and I think I have all of Season 1, 2, and 3 on my iPad. But my problem is my iPad is like literally a Generation 1 iPad. Because I don't use my iPad a lot in the world, and it's from my work. They assign it to me, and I haven't budgeted in a new iPad because I just don't need it. So I'd rather have the extra money to, travel or whatever for work instead of budget an iPad. And so it crashes on me a lot, and sometimes that's frustrating. But I do play quite a bit. I use it, honestly, more of a tool to learn games than I do simply entertainment, because I still don't really love the feel of playing any sort of virtual pinball. I guess it's not specifically the Pinball Arcade or Zen or anything. It's just still, and honestly, it's not even so much the game, because the games have gotten pretty good at it. It's the thumbs on the screen and the weight of holding up an iPad. I guess I need one of those fancy new iPad Airs that are really thin and light. But pressing the screen for the flippers, it just isn't quite the right tactile feel. What blew my mind was at the Midwest Gaming Classic when, I believe it was Virtua Pins, maybe? If I have the company wrong, I apologize. But somebody had their full-size digital pinball games in the hallway there with, a screen as the back box with the DMD, and then a giant TV screen as the playfield with flipper buttons, and set up like a real pinball machine. And the combination of the actual buttons with the software in the games was really good. And I'm a guy who, if you had said, hey man, I'll sell you one of these cool virtual pinball games for like $800, I'd have been like, nah, that's cool. I'm good. Because in my head, I'm like, for $800, I mean, I can go, there's like a Cleopatra on Craigslist I could go buy for like $450 or something like that, So I would have been like, no, but standing there playing that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. Now, it was a lot more than $800, so it kind of tampered me down a little bit, but it was cool. So I find myself, when there's tournaments coming up and I know what the games are, or whatever, usually that's been the case. I pull out the Pinball Arcade on my iPad 1, my original iPad, and I read all the rule sheets and learn what all the switches and scores do. So I really know. It's actually really, really helped me on a few games like Whitewater's a great example. So Whitewater's a game that's always sort of like twisted me up. I've never been very good at that game. The layout never felt right to me. I don't even know. People love that game, and I never got it until I read through all the rules and really understood some of the basic stuff that people listening now are probably going, yeah, Nate, there's rafts, and you advance the rafts, and you get more points every... I just didn't know. I was ignorant about it. And once I learned all that, the next time I played it in person, I put up 500 million points, and was like, oh my gosh, this is fun. This game's really fun. And then I've scored great on that game since, sometimes. So that's been the great thing about Pinball Arcade to me. Even games like Genie is on there. Like, how cool is it that they did Genie? I think that's really neat to go on and play that. I really like Attack from Mars on there, just as sort of like a mindless game to play, because it's pretty open. I have a tough time on Pinball Arcade with games that are like Ripley's Believe It or Not is like a really tough game on there for me, because everything's kind of so close, and the Pat Lawlery games where there's scoops and things. I'm not good at that on the virtual side, so I kind of tend to like the more open games. I play Firepower a lot on there. It's another one I like. So that's what I would do, is I would pick a mixture of games, probably. I think there's a deal, though, if you buy a whole season, so you might just look at one season and go that way. If you're really into the Pinball Arcade and you want to kind of follow it, I was actually listening to the Blockade podcast driving up here today. The Blockade podcast, hosted by Chris, whose last name I don't know or can't remember, and his kind of, I wouldn't say revolving hosts, but it changes up here and there. But listen, go seek out the Blockade podcast, and if you need help finding that, you can go to pinballarcadefans.com, pinballarcadefans.com, and they have a forum in there, and and in the forum there's a podcast section where they actually list all their shows, and I was actually listening to episode number 20 and 21, which were sort of forum questions being answered, much like this episode, funny enough. And there was some really good talk in there about different games and how they play in tournaments, which I have an email to answer on in a second, which will tie into this. But yeah, so check that podcast out. It's not always 100% about pinball and virtual pinball, but it's mostly about that. They actually make fun of themselves sometimes for it not being all about pinball. But there is probably no better source of info in the world than that podcast to talk about the Pinball Arcade, Farsight's Pinball Arcade. So if you're really into that, check that out. I don't know the scene in Delaware. You said you're a freshman at University of Delaware. I used to live in Delaware. I lived in Delaware for 1 year, and I wasn't really playing pinball at the time. Although I did not buy a really cheap haunted house in Christiana, Delaware, which I screwed up on back then. But anyway, so sorry to hear that, and I guess you're not far from Philly. I don't know if you have a car or not, but there's got to be some pinball. I know there's pinball in Pennsylvania. You're not far from York and some other really good places. So I'm sure there's some pinball out there for you to find. But thank you for listening, and thanks for the email. Let me find that other email. Nate, Pinball Arcade questions. This is from Kao, K-A-O. Have you played in any of the Pinball Arcade tournaments? Any suggestions on how to approach these? It's like a repeat answer for you, Kao. I'm sorry. I actually have never played on any of the online tournaments. And I didn't answer the first. I did answer the first question. I play on the iPad. I would feel like I couldn't compete playing in those tournaments on the iPad. I'm not accurate enough. It would be really frustrating. I can't get a good... My iPad doesn't have a... what do they call it? The feature of an iPad where you can like shake it and it knows that you're shaking it. My iPad's too dumb to know that I'm shaking it. What do they call that? It's not a gyroscope. It's a velocimeter. Is that a real thing? I don't know. Whatever. So my iPad doesn't do that. So for me to shake or nudge, I have to actually like tap on a different part of the screen. It's just really awkward. So it doesn't work. So no, I have not played in any of the tournaments. If I was playing on PS4 or something like that, maybe I would have more accuracy and could play in tournaments, but I haven't done it. I do know that, again, listening to the Blockade, those guys do play in the tournaments sometimes, and they talk about it. So they're really good about their show notes normally. I'm not. So if you want to listen to a podcast with good show notes, check them out. So again, here we go. Thank you for the email, Ko. Sorry. All right. Hi, Nate. I have to tell you, I love the show lately. It amazes me how you stay so locked in and energized. I was wondering if you would think about touching on the Pinside Top 100 and if you feel the rankings are accurate or seem skewed. I have my own thoughts about some overrated games, but would like to hear yours. Just a thought. Thanks again, Malcolm. I guess by skewed, you don't mean that like Pinside's like fudging the rankings, like, hey, we're going to give a little love to Addams Family and less love to, I don't know, Grand Lizard or something. But I think what you mean is where they are at now, do I feel, in my personal opinion, show an accurate rankings of like the best pinball machines? So it's a good question, actually. I like the question. And what I would say is it's also subjective. I don't know that it matters, but it is a good reference point on some level. So here's what I feel about the pinball top 100 on Pinside. If you really want to know about a game, I think the value is not so much just in the ranking. The value is in the comments. Oftentimes, I know when I'm going to talk about a game on this show and I'm a little fuzzy on just the general feel of it. I think there was a time where I needed to know something about Bad Cats or Mousing Around or something, and I was kind of not remembering the game real well. I actually went into the comments of that game just to read what people who own it or play it a lot say about it, because that's sometimes the best insight into that game. People will give you often, good strategy tips, maintenance tips in those reviews. It's actually an excellent database. And also on the IPDB, Internet Pinball Database, those rankings and ratings, especially for some of the older games. You go back looking at some of the EMs, a lot of those games are ranked, and a lot of people have left ratings on IPDB of older games and will give you excellent insight. And I have used that to my advantage. I scored really well in the Classics tournament at the Texas Pinball Festival. I learned most of those games sitting there on my iPhone reading IPDB rank ratings about those games because I didn't know how to play a lot of them. And people gave me great simple strategies that they probably wrote 10 years ago in some cases. So, but for the fun of it, for the exercise, we'll look at this. Now, one thing that's interesting about the Pinside Top 100 is it's been running for a while. And so there's a vast difference in the number of actual ratings that games have. If you take, for instance, I believe the most rated game, the game that has literally the most ratings, more people have voted on than any other game, is Twilight Zone, which is the number 2 game. And the top 2 spots have been the same for a long, long time, ever since I've been paying attention on the Pinside Top 100. Medieval Madness is number 1, Twilight Zone is number 2. There's about 1,620 Twilight Zone ratings and about 1,550 Medieval Madness ratings. So just the fact that there's so many ratings and so many of them are so high, for that number to move down or up, for that matter, in any significant amount would take a lot of ratings to come in. So that's why you don't see a lot of movement up there at the very top. Whereas a game that has fewer ratings, such as, I'll find one that makes a lot of sense here, like, number 9, Star Trek Premium LE. Only has 400 ratings on the dot. So 30 ratings that were really high or really low could swing Star Trek a long ways. And you see this with new games that come out. Early adopters rate it really high and it shoots up to the top, or at least into the top 10. And then as other people play it and, you get a broader review. And I think sometimes there may be a little bit of just that counter of, well, I'm not buying that game, so I'm going to rate it lower and get it out of the top 30 or whatever. I don't know. I think there's some of that. You'll see it come back down a bit. So it is interesting, though, what's the top game. So for those of you who don't pay attention to this, here's your top 10 right now on Pinside. And we'll kind of look at the top 10 first. So Medieval Madness, number 1, Twilight Zone, Monster Bash, Attack from Mars. So your top 4 is all Bally Williams 90s games. So at that point, you have Lord of the Rings, which is the highest-ranked Stern game at number 5. Right behind it is the Addams Family, Indiana Jones. So 6 and 7 were back to 90s Bally Williams. And then the top 10 is rounded out by premium/LE editions of late-model Stern games with AC/DC at 8, Star Trek at 9, and Metallica at 10. And what's interesting, if you take those and then look for a pro version of any of those 3 games that have the premium LEs up, the first one to rank is Metallica Pro at number 13. And past that, Star Trek Pro is number 20. So AC/DC Pro gets dinged really hard here, goes all the way down to 41 for the various changes in gameplay and art package and design there. So, when I look at that, can I say to somebody who doesn't really know pinball, if somebody said, what are the best games ever made? Could I point them to those games and feel pretty confident? I think so. I think that's pretty accurate. If you look at, we've talked at length about Medieval Madness on this show and why it has ranked so high over the years. It has an excellent, excellent mix of fantastic artwork, great call-outs and sound. It's funny. Music's pretty darn good. Gameplay is varied and mixed. It's a fan layout, but it has ramp shots, and it has, some accuracy things you need to do. It has multiple ways to play it. You can go for castles. You can go for other multi-balls. There's things going on. It's kind of the all-around, it's the stud from that era. And it was sort of limited. It didn't have a huge run, so it had a little bit of an air of mystique to it, because not everyone could have one, because they're expensive. So it's ranked really high. It just it encompasses, I think, to a lot of people, the DMD pinball era. The 90s pinball era could be summed up in Medieval Madness to a lot of people. It's a rewarding and fun game to play. I talk about this all the time. We're talking about this with Game of Thrones and the thrashing that everyone's giving Game of Thrones over the artwork. If that game's fun, then it doesn't matter, right? Like, if those rules and those shots feel good, if the rules make you want to play one more time, I got to go for that again, I got so close, and I got this, it was great, then it doesn't matter what it looks like. AC/DC. Somebody wrote something brilliant on a forum post, and I'm sorry I don't remember who it was, but I saw Arik actually quote it right after it, and it was right after I read it and thought to myself, that's brilliant. Then Arik on Pinside actually kind of said, you just said a great thing. And he said something, let me paraphrase here, something to the effect of, AC/DC isn't bad artwork, it's just, you know what, I'm sorry, no, he said Game of Thrones isn't, this wasn't AC/DC, sorry, I'm confusing myself. It's Game of Thrones isn't bad artwork, it's just, ugly or generic or something. I'm totally blowing that quote, but whatever he said in that long thread that you probably won't go out of your way and find, it summed it up basically saying, it's not that it's poor. It just doesn't. It's not exciting. It's bland. I don't know. Anyway, sorry. Sidetrack. We've tangented, folks. I don't think tangented is a word. But back to the top 10 there. The top 10 is interesting because you have Medieval Madness, this fan layout game that I think influences a lot of what is getting built nowadays. Then you have Twilight Zone, and Twilight Zone's the exact opposite. It's this wide body game that has all this stuff happening everywhere, and probably the best theme integration ever in a pinball machine, right? I mean, you may disagree and think that Lord of the Rings or Monster Bash or something, but I just think Twilight Zone took this sort of abstract theme, this TV show that covered all these dozens of episodes, and found a way to tie it all together and take you onto this journey and put you into this little world of Rod Serling's Twilight Zone. I don't know. I think it's fantastic. Now, both of those games, Medieval Madness and Twilight Zone, I get the criticism from people telling me, they're both too easy. People, and Monster Bash for that matter, you get down to number 3, Monster Bash, it's too easy. And Twilight Zone solved. I can beat Twilight Zone anytime I want. It's just 2 shots over and over. And there's, there is some truth to that. But I think for me, the reason Twilight Zone has lasted so long, and it has been just a fun game for me. It's lasted because I literally smile when I play that game. And then I get really angry when I, brick the lock shot over and over. But it's fun. It's got a vibe to it. And it's so important in pinball. It's so important in pinball for your game to have, a spirit to it. This kind of thing that's hard to, you can't write it down on a spec sheet. You can't program it into CAD. You have to capture a little bit of magic under the glass, I think. So I think when you look at these top 10 games, there's an awful lot of that happening. Medieval Madness certainly has it. Twilight Zone certainly has it. Monster Bash is fantastic. Fantastic. What a great game. Is it a little easy? I wish I were that good to call pinball machines easy. I'm not that good. It's like when I hear golfers say courses are too easy, I just go, man. I don't think it's too easy. I think it's fantastic. It's fun. Could the rules be deeper? I suppose. Could it be harder to get to the wizard mode? I suppose. But in any case, it's so much fun. It has great artwork, great integration of the monsters. It's so fun. Attack from Mars, I think that's your other game like Medieval Madness in a lot of ways. It is sort of influencing everything else that's being done. Lord of the Rings is sort of your where Twilight Zone, I think, gets a lot of love because of its crazy, layout and design with all these things happening and the quirkiness of what's happening. Lord of the Rings gets the love because it's a story. It's this journey you have to go through, and there's modes in that some people who own the game for years will just never see, and that's really exciting to people. It's also a theme that I think people are in love with. So Lord of the Rings is sort of that weird, it's from the dark days of pinball. It's from 2003. Pinball was, as close to dead as it's ever been in that era. Yet you have Lord of the Rings sitting there at number 5 on the Pinside top 10. Addams Family. What can you say about the Addams Family? It's a game that I loved it when I was 14 years old. I loved it. I don't talk about this on the show much because my first pinball memories I remember were Doctor Who pinball at Pistol Pete's Pizza in Tucson, Terminator 2 pinball at a little no-name arcade next to a convenience store in Sonoyta, Arizona. And those are my early ones. But I got to tell you, I do also have flashbacks to playing an Addams Family in an arcade in a mall in Tucson, Arizona, and just being so blown away by the thing hand coming and grabbing the ball, by the flippers flipping after I drain in time with the finger snaps. It has all of that vibe and that spirit into it. And I actually, since I've been more into competitive pinball and played more tournaments, and that game keeps coming up because it's often waiting for you in a tournament bank, I've learned it a lot more and kind of learned the intricacies of, I can actually, hit the greed shot and bounce the ball back off that wall and, safely get the ball back. Or I can do this. I can backhand here. There's a lot to that game, even though it's, fairly straightforward. Go for multi-ball or tour the mansion. You go, there's a couple ways to play that game. That game and Funhouse to me have really become, just high watermarks for me when I'm looking to just have fun playing pinball. I actually really like those games. It's a great mix of early pinball simplicity and modern pinball. What's the word I'm looking for? Modern pinball design idea, and I'm missing a word here, but I don't think I have to say much more about the Addams Family. So number 7 is the one that kind of throws me a little bit, and it's Indiana Jones: The Pinball Adventure. The people who love it. The people who don't like it just don't get it. I kind of fall into that just don't get it. I've said this on the show before. It generates a few emails every time I do. People telling me I'm crazy and I need to spend more time on it. And I probably need to spend more time on it, and I will. The one at the Silver Ball Museum in Asbury Park is very nice, and I just need to play it more. It's the one for me that I'm not connected to out of this list at all. AC/DC, Star Trek, Metallica. I've talked about them all at length. It's funny. Star Trek's the one of that group that I sort of forget about a little bit, but it's also, when I'm out in the world, I don't play Metallica on location because I own one. I play AC/DC quite often, and I play Star Trek just as much as I play AC/DC. I just need to see it for some reason. I don't know if it's the theme isn't super huge to me, although I like the Star Trek movies. It doesn't stick out in my head very often, like AC/DC does. So they're great games. Stern has made some fantastic all-time great pinball machines in the last 5 years. When I look past that, I'm not going to go through the whole top 100 on this, but when I look past that and I see, the next 5, or there's, a couple J-pop games in there, Theater of Magic, Tales of the Arabian Nights. Love those games. Those games are awesome and fun. I think 5 years from now, they will probably get leaped by a few other games. I just have a feeling that that there are some games that will probably be thought of as, greater pinball experiences. But I wonder and really doubt if many games going forward, and I don't want to sell anybody short. I don't want to sell, especially in indie builders who are able to take their time and really work their way through a project. But I wonder if there's going to be many games that we see in the next, say, 5 to 10 years that can bring to the table what Tales of the Arabian Nights and Theater of Magic do with the art package that's on those games, and with sort of the theme being this it's not a movie, it's an original theme that's sort of fantastical in a way. I just that's what I wish we had more of in today's pinball, is that sort of, warm, whimsical story of fighting the genie, or the theater of magic with the trunk, and there's so much character to those games that's what I feel is missing from something like Game of Thrones at first look of the artwork and the layout. There's just a certain character to those two games specifically. And honestly, Scared Stiff sitting in there at 12 has that character as well. So I see that, and I just, it makes me sort of long for that part of the original theme thing. And that's actually why I fell in love with America's Most Haunted, because I thought that the character and the vibe was there. So I want to pick something out here that I think is overrated. That's actually, I'm really in the back of my head going, come on, Nate, say something not so nice about something. I looked through the top 20, top 25. I think it all makes sense. The Wizard of Oz is at 21, and to some people, that's the greatest pinball machine ever made, just because of the technological advances. And to some people, it's really, really pretty and not that compelling to play over and over and over and over again, despite the deep rule set. And it does have a deep rule set. I recently talked about playing it farther than I ever had, and it was actually a lot of fun to me once I got past the stuff I'd seen over and over. So I think that's, it's sitting at 21. That's probably about where I would have it too, just for what it does, new, if nothing else. I get the Bram Stoker's Dracula love right now. It's sort of the hot game to a lot of people. I know Ed Robertson last episode said it's like his favorite game. I've never been able to love that game. It's brutal to me. That sits at number 32. The Getaway High Speed 2 sits at 36. That surprises me a little bit. It's also a game I'm not awfully familiar with. Revenge from Mars at number 37. I have a hard time saying that Revenge from Mars is the 37th best pinball machine ever made. That really, for me personally, in my opinion, my thoughts, that's tough. I don't know about that. Indianapolis 500 sitting at 40. I think that one will fall over time. I had looked at this earlier, and I remember there was something that stuck out to me as very odd. I'm not seeing it now. Well, in any case, it's all very subjective. It's a great place to look and kind of, see how things are ranked, see how things are rated, and then form your own opinions. But yeah, I don't know. There was something else that I don't know. It's interesting to see some of the old Sterns down there around 100 pop up. So anyway, cool question, good thought. Do I think they're skewed? Oh, I think that things are always skewed a little bit by what's new and what's hot and how long something's been rated. But that's one thing I would really pay attention to, is something that has that many ratings can't move around a whole lot. All right, let's see what else we got here. All right, hi Nate, thanks for the shows. I got into restoring pinball machines this year and love having new content every weekend to listen to while I work on my games. Working on my new Black Knight project machine tonight, actually. How fitting. I'm a few days late listening to your Game of Thrones episode, but just wanted to mention something that I think is really important in regards to our perception of the art package. While I agree the art package is underwhelming for the theme, I think Stern's true mistake for this reveal was choosing to share only 3D rendered images of the game and not any actual photographs. I think a significant part of what's making it feel wrong, that's in quotes, is the fact that they're showing it to us through the lens of a very poorly executed 3D visualization of the product. Look at the playfield surface, for example. It clearly looks like a bitmap image just mapped onto a flat surface, lacking any clear coat reflections and barely even any shadowing. There's no lighting of any kind. I know that seems beside the point in terms of showing off the actual art package, but choosing to present it like this was only setting themselves up for failure from the beginning. Our human eyeballs know what a real pinball machine looks like, and as we look at these high-res images that don't quite meet that perception, I think Stern has managed to create an uncanny valley for pinball machines. Again, I do agree the actual art package is not what I would have expected either. I think our perception of it will only improve once actual photographs are released. The playfield lighting video they released the other day already feels better to me. Thanks, Nate. Sorry I went so long. Hope you read through it all. Yes, Todd, I read through it all. And I agree. Totally agree. Those photos were odd. It was an odd choice and an interesting way to do it. My hope originally when I saw that was, well, if they're just showing us 3D renderings and maybe there's no real artwork printed on anything and they can change things. Now, I also know that Stern is excellent at showing a game and shipping a game. So, I don't hold out a lot of hope for that sort of situation. I do know and have heard from a few different places that, Stern heard Pinside. I mean, they absolutely heard Pinside. They knew what was said, and I think that trying to tiptoe around this. Some people I talked to in pinball, not necessarily at Stern, but in pinball, were like really, really not surprised at the reaction. There's some people who work in, say, distribution of pinball, maybe, that I think had maybe seen the game leading up to the announcement, and when the announcement hit, really expected that reaction. And I don't know. It's been tough. It's been tough for me because, even Ed, who is a huge Steve Ritchie fan, comes on the show last episode and is like, yep, that was terrible. That was horrible. Awful. And that's too bad. And it's amplified on this particular license because people that are into that show are so into that show. I don't know if I've said that here or not, but that's why it's been so amped up. With Mustang, the artwork, nobody really cared. It was kind of like, they're cars, they're Mustang. How's this thing going to play? That's all anybody really cared about, because nobody was that, I shouldn't say nobody, most people were not that, heart-drawn to Mustang pinball. Star Trek got a bit of heat over the art package being too bland. I think people were like, it's just a color, it's a rainbow-colored Starfield. What's going on? But even that, and there was some criticism of the back glasses, and I know some alternates were made, but even that, I felt, it was kind of like, it was almost we're going to complain because we want to complain, and when we play this thing and it plays great, we're going to love it. It was more that vibe. This Game of Thrones thing has been, I had expectations. This was going to be my dream theme. This was going to be the Dark Throne Castle bloody game in my house that I was going to shine a spotlight on and walk people back to and just point in all its glory. And what you gave me doesn't fit my, mind's eye. It doesn't fit my expectations. That's why the pushback's been so hard on Game of Thrones. So, Todd, I think you're exactly right. Yes, confirmed. All right, here. Hi, Nate. Avid Australian listener here. Nice how easy pinball crosses all international boundaries. I mean, that could be an email in and of itself, because that's very true. Getting to play at Pinburg with people from all over the world was kind of awesome because, everybody knows what a jackpot is. Everybody knows what a multi-ball is. It's fun. A question regarding tournament play loosely related to golf, a game I think we both enjoy. Yes, I love to play golf. I wish I had more time to do more of it. Is it frowned upon to have a caddy during a tournament? I know I can score better when I have a friend standing near me describing what the DMD is saying or what shots to go for when I'm playing. This is more important when the game is unfamiliar, of course, which is often the case in larger tournaments. Is this acceptable or frowned upon? I am 99% sure, I might be making this up in my head, but I believe there is an IFPA or a PAPA rule that basically says no coaching. One player to a ball. You can't help somebody while they're playing in a tournament. And I would feel the same way. And I know what you're saying, where a caddy can tell a player how to lay up. He's got the course mapped out for him. He's walked it. He's measured off distances. He can be sort of like the conscience of the player. Pinball is not really like that. I think that I would be really bummed if I was in a heads-up match with someone and his buddy was standing there saying, oh, extra ball's lit, because I think one of the really important, in golf, a player can literally stand there for a long, long time and measure things out and could technically walk off a shot if he wanted to. I think caddies sort of speed the game up and actually help a golfer make decisions faster with less second-guessing. Well, pinball isn't that methodical of a game. In pinball, part of, I think, the playing aspect is not just swinging the club, making the shot. Part of the playing is knowing those rules, is keeping track of what's lit, keeping track of what I've completed, where I'm at. That's really an important part of the game. So I think that having someone else do that, I wouldn't like that at all. And if that was the case, if I could have a caddy, I would simply go, find Jorian Engelbrectson or Bowen Cairns or Keith Elwin and pay them money to be my caddy and stand there and help me know what I'm doing. And then you'd have a mess because there'd be a bidding war and you'd have players making more as caddies than winning tournaments, and we can't have that. So I know what you're saying. I appreciate it, and you're right. I actually just had this happen. I literally just had this happen 2 nights in a row at Modern Pinball. The first night with Nick Zendejas, was Zen, coaching me through Monopoly. Not a game I know that well, not really ever been drawn to that game. And he stood next to me and walked me through how to just kill the railroad shot over and over and over, how to get multi-ball going. I put up a score on Monopoly I never would have put up without him standing there walking me through that. And then Steve Bowden the next night did the same thing for me on, I don't even remember what it was, Demolition Man or something, where he was just oh, go for this shot. And it does. It helps. It's a great way to learn a game. It's a great way to practice. But no, not for competition. I think that would absolutely be frowned upon. And then he did end up his email with, "Hope Stern can grow a pair and modify Game of Thrones art because I've ordered one. I've ordered one. Anyone? I've ordered one already," is what I think he's saying. "Love the theme, love Steve's games, and think the rules may save it." So it's been kind of a common theme in emails this past week or so. That is from Dr. John, as we'll call him. So thank you, John. I appreciate the email. Hey, guess what, folks? There's no Crazy Forum Static Mania for you tonight, because that's episode 195. We're done. Burlington, Vermont is out the window waiting. I'll be traveling through New England this week and doing Taylor Roadshows, so I may not talk to you until this week is over. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for the YouTube follows. You guys are awesome. We've doubled my YouTube followings now, by a bunch. Now the onus is on me to get some more content up. So I got some stuff planned. I think it's going to be really, really cool. So thanks for getting signed up on the YouTube page. So it's YouTube/Coast2Coast Pinball. You can follow us on Facebook, like us on Twitter, review us on iTunes, all that good stuff. I appreciate the support. You guys are great. Had some t-shirt orders today. I've got t-shirts in navy, heather red, and heather green. Heather green's not pictured on the website, but I do have them if you're interested. And you can check out coast2coastpinball.com for all that good stuff. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Play more pinball. Later. Are you still here? You waiting for a cool little sound from a pinball machine ending the show? Well, all right, here's the deal. I don't have all those sounds with me. They're on my old computer, and I didn't copy that folder, so I don't have anything for you. So the show's over. It's done. That's all. Thanks. For real. No more show. It's all done. Go away. Stop. All right, fine. Here we go. Pew, pew, pew!